Hey there, everybody. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another edition of our questions and answers show. Today is Sunday, January the 6th. We've got a boatload of stuff to get to today. We took a week off last week for the holidays and doing the Judas Priest tapings and all that kind of stuff, so I figured give it a little bit of rest. But you guys have sent in a lot of good questions, so I'm going to tackle as many of them as I can today, so let's get started. So the first one is from Retro, and Retro says, "Hi Pete, I'm from the UK. Have you heard of a band from the UK called Thunder? If you haven't checked out the Backstreet Symphony album." Yeah, that's actually a pretty cool band, early 90s, I believe. To my ears, kind of reminds me, you hear little bits of Queen in the vocals, a little bit of Bad Company in some of the arrangements, but I also hear a little bit of like early Billy Squier, as well as like the first couple of Extreme albums. Pretty solid band. I'm not even sure if they're still around. It's been a while since we've heard anything from them. From Rosemarie Sanchez, Alvin Lee, 10 years after, awesome shirt. I was wearing a 10 years after shirt last week, or actually an Alvin Lee shirt. What is your favorite album? Watt or Cricklewood Green are my favorites. Yeah, I would say probably my favorite albums from 10 years after. I love the Shh album. Shush album. Shh. Cricklewood Green obviously is great. I like A Space and Time also quite a bit. Those are probably my three favorites from 10 years after, but great band. Great band. From Moonspell 67. Thanks for the Night Winds. I'll be looking for them now. Very cool. From 1971, have you heard Black Horse? I'm enthralled, though I've never heard of Black Horse before. If you're familiar with them, do you have a backstory or opinion? I think you're talking about Black Horse from 1979. Are you talking about the Southern rock band from Texas? That's the only Black Horse I'm familiar with. That debut album is pretty damn good. If you like Point Blank, Molly Hatchet, Little ZZ Top, maybe Blackfoot, and certainly Doc Holliday, another underrated Southern rock band. But yeah, that first Black Horse album is pretty damn good. But that's from 1979, so hopefully that's the band you're talking about. From Earl Joy, Pete, are you familiar with Jeff Lynne's first band, Idle Race, in your opinion? Yeah, I mean, that self-titled debut, or actually, no, that's the second album. The Birthday Party is the first album. Good stuff. I mean, if you like Jeff Lynne, how can you not like it? And, Jeff, that was basically Jeff doing his kind of like British psychedelic pop thing, not too dissimilar from the late 60s Beatles. Good stuff. It made sense that he went from that into The Move and from that into ELO. That's got cool transition there. So pretty cool stuff. From Lonnie VR, Pete, what's your opinion on Southern rock band Black Oak, Arkansas studio albums? I like the Atco stuff and the MCA ones aren't bad. And the first Capricorn album is great and many independent releases are good, but they rarely capture the aura of Black Oak live. Your thoughts? I don't have any of the studio albums. I just have that Black Oak live album. And that's a damn good one. For me, I've never picked up all the studio albums because most of the versions of those great songs sound better on the live album, which is the case with a lot of bands from that era, right? So I really don't know. And I'm sure one day I might dive into all those studio albums because I really do enjoy Black Oak, Arkansas. Lonnie's got a second question here. I know you've touched on this before, but I'd like to know your opinion on the British prog band UK. I thought they were magnificent. Both lineups were awesome. Yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree. I like the first lineup better. For me, with having Holdsworth in that band was just like, absolutely amazing. But the second album was damn good too. Again, a band that we almost wish could have gone on longer. But I also think a band, especially that initial lineup, man, they should have been huge. That album should have been huge, and instead of just kind of having this kind of cult legendary status. But yeah, great musicians. That's what you call a supergroup, right? Both lineups, awesome stuff. From Kim Omaki, are you familiar with the Norwegian guitar god Terje Rypdal and his music? Absolutely. He does plenty of outstanding Nordic jazz rock type stuff, as well as symphonic orchestral work. Deserves a lot more attention. Yeah, I agree. I love Terje. That Odyssey album is great. Whenever I Seem to Be Far Away is great. And I love the album he did with Miroslav Vitois and Jack DeJohnette. Great stuff. I think that his earlier stuff is just so awesome. And what a great guitar player. Really good guitar player that doesn't get talked about enough. Another question. For a 100-degree turn, what are your thoughts concerning the music, especially early, of Elvin Bishop? Lots of good blues swamp stuff there. I mean, yeah, who doesn't like Elvin Bishop, right? He had that one huge hit, but, was it the Let It Flow album, Rock My Soul, and Juke Joint Jump, they all came out like within a year or so from each other. But that was early mid '70s. All fun stuff. Really tasty guitar player. He's sometimes one of those guys who you would have hoped at some point that he would have just really got serious and done some really good like gritty blues stuff. But he was more into doing that kind of like kind of fun stuff. And you know what? God bless him. That's nothing wrong with that. From Mark Williams, hello Pete, great show as always. Wonder if you have heard or own any of the Doug Aldrich stuff. 3 albums by Bad Moon Rising, 2 albums by Burning Rain, also 3 solo albums. Also, what's your opinion on Goddard? I think I have about 12 or 13 of their albums. The only Doug Aldrich album, like pre his work with, Dio and Whitesnake and so on and so forth, was that, I guess that was the Bad Moon Rising album, Blood, from 1993. That's actually pretty decent, but I haven't heard any of the other stuff. I like Doug a lot as a guitar player. Really, really good player. I probably should investigate a little bit more. As far as Goddard goes, or Goddard, however the hell they say that name. Yeah, I've heard a bunch of Goddard albums. Great band. Just so accessible. Just great 80s style, commercial hard rock. And just, I've heard like a bunch of the last couple albums, and they were all really, really solid. Really, really solid. From Moonspell 67, is there a stigma or some strange reason nobody speaks about the Alex Skolnick Trio? I don't know, is there? Talk about metal songs done by jazz guys. Maybe I have hearing loss, but I'm sure I have never heard a CD review or interview. I don't know. I'm sure it's out there. We've reviewed plenty of Alex Skolnick Trio stuff on the website. Probably haven't talked about him on this show because I can't remember the last time they released an album. But I know that Goodbye to Romance and Transformation albums are both really cool, and I think that's kind of that they were doing that jazz, doing covers of like hard rock and metal stuff way before it became kind of commonplace now. But Alex is a really nice guy. I've had the pleasure of meeting him a couple times, and he's an incredible musician, whether he's playing jazz or symphonic rock or thrash metal. That guy is like bona fide guitar hero. From AZDH85224, Pete, as a great fan of Deep Purple, I was wondering if you have the Flying in a Purple Dream CD, recorded in Japan 1983 with Joe Satriani on guitar. Not the best sounding quality, but a great bootleg, an interesting listen with a great set list, mixing in newer songs with the classics. I don't actually own it, but I have heard it. Yeah, that's kind of like a cool curiosity in the history of Deep Purple, right? That, what was it, like 6 months, 8 months? I don't even remember how long it was, where Joe Satch replaced Blackmore before, they brought in Steve Morse. And the band was very happy with what he did. Sounds cool, right? But, Joe had a lot of things going on, and I think Joe just wasn't ready to commit to it. So, which is, I think it worked out for the best for both parties. But, yeah, good stuff. I probably should get that on. That's one of the few, like, kind of cool live albums that I don't have in my Deep Purple collection back there. For Major 7, what are your thoughts on Peter Banks versus Steve Howe? Well, no disrespect to Peter Banks, but we're talking Steve Howe here, right? I will say, in more recent years, I have been listening to a lot more Peter Banks stuff, like the Flash albums, especially those first 2, and a lot of the Peter Banks solo stuff. That guy was a hell of a player. And, you have to wonder if he would have stayed in the band and Howe not come in, would their music still have evolved the way it did, and what would we think of Peter Banks today, right? I really think Peter Banks was a really good guitar player. Maybe not the all-around virtuoso at doing like a million different styles like Steve Howe could and can do. But I think Banks was a very underrated player. Very, very underrated player. And so I give him a lot of credit. Those first couple of Yes albums, they're good for what they are, but I just don't think the band was fully realized at the time. And I think that Banks as a player hadn't really come out of his shell until Flash and some of the later solo stuff. Great player. I'm going to go with Steve Howe here, but I have come to really appreciate Peter Banks more and more in recent years. From Nick's Texans fan number 1. Hey, Pete, as always, I really appreciate you answering my questions. I know you mentioned you're not a big lyric guy, but if you could, what is your favorite lyric or line from a song, and what does it mean to you, or why does it resonate with you personally? They say that life's a carousel. Spinning fast, you've got to ride it well. The world is full of kings and queens who blind your eyes and steal your dreams. It's heaven and hell. Oh, well. Do I even have to say why that's so great? It's just... the entire lyric to the whole Black Sabbath Heaven and Hell song is just absolute perfection. And I remember when I first heard it when I was like, 13, 14 years old, it just made so much sense to me. It still does today. The whole song, but that particular little part of it right there. It just says everything about life in general, right? Awesome stuff. And it just, again, not much of a lyric guy, but man, that tune always gets me. It's just, that song is as powerful as it is musically. That song is all about the lyrics and Ronnie delivering it, right? So that's my choice. From Luis Roberto. What's up, Luis? Did you see any Dream Theater shows with Kevin Moore on keyboards? Absolutely, I did. The Images and Words tour, second leg, the Chance Theater in Poughkeepsie, New York. That was January 7th, 1993. And I've seen them like over 20 times since then. Second question from Luis. Slide it in. Whitesnake. Do you prefer the UK version with the legendary Mel Galley or the American version remixed with the master John Sykes? Well, I mean, of course I'm from the US, and the US version is the one that I grew up with and fell in love with, and I've heard the UK version. Mel Galley's on both of them, but it's just that I believe that Mickey Moody's initial stuff was taken off the US version. So I think what you have on the US version of Slide It In is all the Mel Galley rhythm guitars and some leads, but with John Sykes sweetening up some of the rhythms and tossing in a couple leads. But you know, I prefer the Sykes version. What can I tell you? That's because that's what I know. They're both great, but you know, I've listened to them side by side, and that's what I prefer because that's what I know as well. Another question from Luis. Wild Horses with Brian Robertson, Neal Carter, Jimmy Bain, Lawrence Archer. Did you have the opportunity to go to the band's shows in the 80s? I never saw Wild Horses live, and to my knowledge, I don't even remember hearing them tour here in the States. They probably were, but I never saw them. And what is your favorite Blackfoot album? Marauder, followed closely by Tomcat. Love both those albums. From Dallas Space Cowboy. How many original or classic members does a band need to lose before it becomes a tribute band? For me personally, I feel there are some bands where only one member matters. Tony Iommi is Black Sabbath, Lemmy is Motorhead, etc. But then there are other bands where it's more of a team effort like Rush or Deep Purple. Where do you draw the line? You got to have at least one original member, right? Pretty much. I think the one band that I give a pass to on this is Molly Hatchet. You know, they got the one guy who's been in the band since, when did he join the band? 85 or so, maybe 86, something like that. He wasn't an original member. And then everybody else left or died, and he stayed and has been running the band ever since. I give them a pass because, quite frankly, all the new music they've done over the last 20 years still sounds like fucking Molly Hatchet, right? So, but yeah, in most cases, you got to have at least one member there, right? And it's got to be like a pretty notable member. There's so many bands out there who are just, you know, maybe the second drummer is still around and he's added all new guys. It's just, it gets really watered down at that point. But yeah, got to have at least one key member, you would think, right? From Tate Davis. Hi, Pete. Great video. What are your top 5 drum tracks from Keith Moon during his time with The Who? Keep them coming. I will. How about Sparks? Specifically, I just love the live version from either Woodstock or the Isle of Wight. Man, he rips on that. Won't Get Fooled Again. Specifically, the live version from the Shepperton Studios, which is on the Kids Are All Right soundtrack. That's awesome, but even the original on Who's Next is great. Young Man Blues from Live at Leeds. Keith burns on that. Heaven and Hell from the Isle of Wight live album. He's incredible on that too. And how about 515 from Quadrophenia? Love Keith Moon. From L. Franklin. Hi, Pete. Thank you for answering our questions. You are very welcome. I feel like I've been out of the know since the 90s. It sounds funny because of the amount of information at our fingertips. I just read that Mark Shelton passed away on tour in July this year. I am a Manila Road fan, but probably more in the early 90s when I used to hang out on the Prodigy boards online. There is a group called 80s Metal Anyone. Small groups of people, so much fun. Tape trading back then. I met so many cool people who turned me on to all kinds of metal, from the new wave of British heavy metal to Manila Road. Mark Shelton was on our board often, as was Mark Briotti from Jag Panzer. It was a thrill to talk to these guys. I can't believe he's passed. Are you a fan of Manila Road? Sorry for the long post. Yeah, you know, that was kind of a real sudden and tragic thing when Mark passed away, you know, just a couple months ago. And what a great band. Hold on. Manila Road, really underrated metal band. Really good stuff. who kind of did all sorts of things, but always kept true to their key sound. I urge any of you who have not listened to Manila Road to go out, and especially some of their early to mid-'80s albums like Crystal Logic, Open the Gates, The Deluge, and Mystification. Mandatory listening right there. Very different sounding band. Very cool. You know, some of their riffs, they're metal, but also kind of hark back to some of the early Alex Lifeson riffs from those first like 4 or 5 Rush albums. Mark's vocals are definitely different. He's a little on the nasally side. It takes a little getting used to, but once you get past that, the music is just epic and heavy, and at times very progressive. So yeah, Manila Road, check them out. All right, from Skallagrimmer Kveltovson. Hi, Pete. Thank you for answering my last 2 questions. 2 more if you don't mind. Do you know the Walking into Clarksdale album by Jimmy Page and Robert Plant? I really love it and think it's among the best works they've ever released. Second question. Do you listen to any recent Italian prog bands? If so, which ones do you like? Thank you and happy holidays to you and your family. Thank you so much. As far as Walking into Clarksdale, I actually don't own it. And I'm like, was kind of shocked when I went to look, and I'm like, yeah, I never bought that album for some reason. But yeah, no, it's a decent album. And I think it's one that's kind of aged pretty well. As you know, kind of a really solid post-Zeppelin project type of thing. So thanks for bringing it up because I need to go and purchase that. As far as recent Italian prog, you know, nothing can beat the classics, but there's a ton of good new bands out there. I'm just going to name a couple that I'm fairly familiar with. La Machera di Sera is very good. King Crow, a little heavier, but still kind of prog. Very good band. These guys, Deus Ex Machina, I don't know what they've done in recent years, but man, they have a lot of really good 2000 in the 90s and early 2000s albums. Really good. DFA, another great Italian band. And The Watch, if you like classic Gabriel era Genesis. I highly recommend The Watch. So there's a couple of them for you. From Henry Urbach. Thanks for answering my question about Come Taste the Band. I probably wasn't clear enough because you slightly misunderstood what I was getting at, so let me restate it. Do you think had Come Taste the Band was released as a debut album by a new band, not relating to Deep Purple or any other current rockers at the time, with unknown musicians, would it have made a bigger splash on the U.S. radio market? It's more of an American, is it more than American, is it more, wait, it's a more American album with a question mark? Okay. In my opinion, it would fit quite well with the new bands that came on the scene at the time, like Foreigner, Heart, or Boston. Okay, so now I get what you're getting at. So if it was not a Deep Purple album, if there's no one in Deep Purple in the band, but those same exact songs sounding just like they did had come out, would it have been more accepted? And I don't know if it would have caught on with radio. There are a couple tunes on there that are somewhat radio friendly, but yeah, I mean, because there's great songs on that album, right? I think the reason why it didn't do so well is because, you know, the Deep Purple was counting on their hardcore fans to buy it and get into it, and the problem was Blackmore left. In comes Tommy Bolin. Deep Purple hardcore fans are pissed off because there's no Blackmore, and they don't want to give it a try. And I don't think the record company really pushed it well, because there's a couple easily, you know, decent possible singles on there. And then the tour was somewhat of a disaster, so it didn't help. And then the band splintered. So yeah, I think if that was if the record label was behind it, if it was a brand new band and they, you know, gave it some couple tunes some airplay, would it have done well? Possibly. You know, I mean, who's to say? It's kind of, you know, we're so far removed from it now, but I think the songs warrant it, right? Whether it's Deep Purple or not, it's a good album as far as I'm concerned. From David M. What are your top 5 metal concept albums and top 5 prog concept albums? All right, so let's start with prog first. Jethro Tull, Thick as Brick. Genesis, The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. Neal, this is a newer one, but man, it's so good. Neal Morse Band, The Similitude of a Dream. Check it out if you haven't. Awesome. Marillion, Clutching at Straws. And I'm going to include it here because it kind of belongs somewhere, but it's not prog or metal. The Who's Tommy. Got to have that on there, right? Quadrophenia too, for Christ's sake. As far as metal goes, these are mostly progressive metal stuff. Queensryche's Operation Mindcrime. Dream Theater, Scenes from a Memory. Metropolis 2. Iron Maiden, Seventh Son of a Seventh Son. Symphony X, Paradise Lost. Love that album. Great concept album. And Between the Buried and Me, Colors. Fantastic, fantastic concept album. Good question, David. From Henry Urbach again. Pete, I guess this is relating to last week's show. You mean Peter Hamill's vocals are not for top 40 classic rock radio? No, they're not. I have 3 questions for this week. There are 2 prog avant-garde bands I can't get into as much as I tried. Magma, I recall you feel the same, that's right. And the other is Henry Cow with Fred Frith. How do you feel about Henry Cow, and what is your favorite album if you like them? You know, I got to be in the mood to listen to Henry Cow. There's stuff that's just really complex and avant-garde and kind of jazzy, and you know, it's very good though. I like the Legend album. I like a lot. Unrest is very good, and In Praise of Learning. Those are the three albums that I like that I can get into. I've heard some of the other albums. You know, they have a couple albums with that female vocalist. I can't remember her name, and she just like when she starts singing, I'm like, I want to run. But musically, that band is very good. Kind of what they always reminded me of is if you could picture like the Waka Jawaka, that jazz fusion era of Frank Zappa. You know, it's the early mid '70s, with a little bit of Gentle Giant as well as some classic jazz as well as the Canterbury flavors all rolled into one. Very cool band, instrumentally very cool. So if you're either on the fence or haven't checked out Henry Cow, I highly recommend Legend, Unrest, or In Praise of Learning, especially Legend and Unrest. Those are my two favorites of those. All right, Henry's got another question here. What are your thoughts on two of my favorite bands, Caravan and Bebop Deluxe, and also Bill Nelson's solo work outside of Red Noise, which I just can't stand? I have like a 2-disc collection of Caravan. That's all I have, and I like that stuff. I don't like it enough that I've wanted to go and dive into all their albums with Caravans. For something about Caravan's music never really clicked with me. I don't dislike them at all. What I've heard I've liked, so that's about as much as I can say on Caravan. As far as Bebop Deluxe, and there's another question coming up, I do like the early Bebop Deluxe stuff, and I think Bill Nelson is a fabulous guitar player. I have never listened to any of his solo albums, and as far as Red Noise, you know, so I really can't comment. I have like 4 Bebop Deluxe albums, and I really like those a lot, but I'll get more into them in a couple minutes. Also, would you do a show on the history of the band, The Sweet, or at least top 10 songs? Yeah, I think I can easily do a Sweet top 10 song show. That would be pretty cool. So I put it on my list. From NP, hey Pete, pop came up a lot this week and got me thinking. What are some of your favorite pop songs from heavy and or prog artists? I.e. Rainbow, Since You've Been Gone, Jethro Tull, Lap of Luxury, Blue Oyster Cult's Lonely Teardrops, so on and so forth. How about Rainbow Stone Cold? That's a really good pop song, right? How about Love Will Find a Way from Yes? I like that a lot. Still Loving You by the Scorpions. Pretty cool tune. You know, I've been warming up. I know there's a rant coming on this, but I've been warming up to a lot of those songs from those 80s Genesis albums, which I basically just kind of cast aside for many years. But lately I've been reinvestigating and trying to, you know, rediscover them, and I have. Just a Job to Do is a great tune off the self-titled Genesis album. And how about Burning for You by Blue Oyster Cult? That's kind of a pop song, right? You know, great tune. What else? There's more questions here from NP. Also, what are your thoughts on the 4 early Alice Cooper albums? Flush the Fashion, Special Forces, Special Forces, say it slow, Pete, Zipper Catches Skin, and Dada. I have a real soft spot for them, especially Zipper Catches Skin, as they were some of the first Alice albums I listened to. I think I've answered this question before. I like those albums. I don't love them. They're good. I think Flush the Fashion and they're all good. They're all kind of weird. Flush the Fashion and Special Forces. I can't say that damn 2 words there. Special Forces. I'm still saying it wrong. Special Forces. Pretty good album. Zipper Catches Skin also is good. Dada, I think, is the weirdest one out of all of them, but they're good. It's just Alice doing some different stuff, and Alice was kind of a mess at the time, and drinking and drugs and all that kind of stuff. And the music has this kind of like weird new wave kind of punk flair to some of the songs. It's not classic Alice in my opinion, and not my favorite period of his music, but I still like it. There's a lot of good stuff on those albums. From Scott McGregor. What's up, Scott? Hey, Pete, I'm here to bug you again. Of course you are. Have you heard the solo album Celestial Fire from David Bainbridge, the guitarist from Iona? I have not, Scott. Sorry. Another question. Have you ever read the biography Bill Graham Presents? No, but I'd like to. I've heard that's really good because he's a very cool guy in the history of rock and roll who knew and worked with so many great bands and artists. So yeah, I need to read that. Thanks for the heads up there. Last, how about a retrospective on Cozy Powell? Although not a songwriter or singer, his playing in every band that he has played in launched all the musicians to a much greater level. And I would love to see a retrospective on Jeff Beck. Some good suggestions there. I love Cozy. It's my favorite drummer of all time, and I love Jeff Beck. From Sam Christopher. Hi, Pete. Thanks for answering my question last week, and I'm glad you like Night Winds. Thanks for that. I have 2 questions this week, one from my wife and one from me. My wife Nicole wants to know if you've heard Whoopee Cat, an Australian blues hard rock band, and if so, what do you think of them? I had never heard of them before, but I went on YouTube and listened to their EP prior to taping here, and I liked it. Pretty decent. They remind me of Blues Pills from Sweden quite a bit. Really good stuff. I would like to hear more from them. Pretty cool. Sam's got a second part. Have you heard of Cabinets of Curiosity, a young New Jersey-based prog band? They put out an EP in 2017, I think, and their first full length is about to drop this month. I had never heard of them before. Again, I went here on YouTube and listened to a bunch of things. They've done some interesting kind of jazzy, quirky, proggy covers of like metal songs. Pretty interesting. And I heard some snippets from one of the tunes that they're working on for their new album. I like it. Pretty cool. Like I said, kind of quirky, very jazzy. I like it. What do we got here? So from Matty Boy Walker. Hey, Pete, hope you have had a very Merry Christmas and a rockin' New Year. So far, so good, Matty. My question this week is, what are your thoughts on the current status of AC/DC, one of my all-time favorite bands? Do you think Brian Johnson and Phil Rudd will be back with the band full-time and that Cliff Williams will be convinced to return? If not, who will be on bass? And do you think Agnes and Malcolm's nephew Stevie will remain? Well, based on what I've heard, okay, there have been sightings of both Brian and Phil in recording studios, whatever, because I think their band's working on new music. And there's also like some unreleased tracks and pieces of tracks that, Malcolm was working on with them. So, and as far as I know, Stevie's still going to be around. So I have a feeling that Brian and Phil are going to be back. As far as can Brian tour, that I don't know. That remains to be seen. I think Phil's going to be back till he screws up again, right? As far as Cliff, I've heard that he is very serious about his retirement. So I don't know. And who they'll get on bass, I haven't heard anything. Who would I like? Jesus, there's so many great bass players out there. They need someone who's kind of going to be solid in the pocket, right? They don't want someone who's going to overplay or anything like that. So there's so many guys. But who knows? So we'll see. I'm interested to hear new music. I thought their last album was really, really good. I saw them on that tour. It was great. From James Ferrante. Last year, I came across the band Alpha Ralpha on YouTube and loved their album, so I bought the CD from Discogs. The band released only one album, the self-titled LP released for Warner in Canada and France in 1977. Their music can be described as a mixture of jazz rock and French symphonic, where guitars and keyboards are carrying the melodies for the most part, with occasional usage of vibraphone and marimba vocal harmonies. He didn't actually ask me a question here, but I guess he's just tossing this out. Yeah, that's actually a very good album. So if you haven't checked it out, Alpha Ralpha, sorry. The whole album is available for listen on YouTube. It's good stuff. From Andrew Suppa. I heard you mention one of my favorite artists last week when you compared Elton John's Paul McCartney. I've been an Elton fan since Honky Chateau. I know you lean towards heavier fare than I, but I respect your musical opinion and would like to know what you thought of his classic years 70 to 75. Keep up the good work and look forward to every show. Thanks, man. For me, Elton from that self-titled album all the way through to the Blue Moves album that he released later in the decade is almost untouchable. I mean, Tumbleweed Connection, Madman Across the Water, Honky Chateau, like you mentioned, Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, Captain Fantastic, Rock the Westies, Don't Shoot Me, I'm Just a Piano Player, even Caribou, for Christ's sake. It's just great albums, great songs. I love 70s Elton John. And I like a lot of his, other albums in the 80s and 90s and so on, but nothing compares to those 70s albums, man. Oof, just great. What a great songwriter. And I'm going to see him in like a month and a half for the first time ever, yes. From Anconia's Place. You mentioned Tony Carey with regards to Rainbow Rising. Have you checked out his solo stuff and or the Planet P project releases he did? Great, virtually unknown in the USA artist. Yeah, I mean, he had that first Planet P album, which came out in, 1983. He had a pretty big hit here, that Why Me tune. And honestly, I remember hearing that album and that song, and I liked it. I don't think I ever owned it, but I remember I had a buddy who had it, and we used to listen to it all the time. Kind of like Alan Parsons' Project, little bits of like, Pink Floyd and spots, if you're a fan of Eloy, you can hear some of that kind of early 80s Eloy. But yeah, good stuff, But and that Why Me song, great tune. In fact, I went and re-listened to that earlier this morning. Holds up pretty well. A lot of really great synth stuff on there. From John Hodgson, question for next time. You often mention jazz fusion as a major source of enjoyment. What are your opinions on more pure jazz artists such as Miles Davis, Ornette Coleman, Oscar Peterson, Charlie Parker, etc.? Yeah, I mean, great stuff. I am a huge Miles Davis fan. I have Miles Davis music from all throughout his history, all his different phases he went through. Great stuff. Ornette Coleman, that's more challenging stuff. But, man, Ornette was a great player, too. Oscar Peterson, Charlie Parker, you can't go wrong. Some other artists you want to check out. Thelonious Monk, great stuff. I'm a big Art Blakey fan. Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers, man, there's some great Art Blakey albums. Charlie Mingus, John Coltrane. If you're into Charlie Parker, you got to check out John Coltrane. Early Benny Goodman stuff is actually pretty damn good. The early Herbie Hancock stuff, I'm talking about like the 60s, late 60s stuff. Sonny Rollins, Dave Brubeck, Freddie Hubbard, Lee Morgan, Eric Dolphy. Check out Eric Dolphy. Great player. The old Pat Metheny stuff. Wes Montgomery, Grant Green. If you like Wes Montgomery, you like that kind of early jazzy guitar stuff, check out Grant Green. A lot of great classic jazz artists, man. So many of them. From Victor Delgado. Hello, I really appreciate your show and highly respect your recommendations. I am writing to get your opinion on symphonic metal from Europe. Do you like it, and what is your opinion on this category? Also, have you heard of the symphonic metal female supergroup called Exit Eden? They have some videos on YouTube. Would like your opinions. Yeah, I like a lot of European symphonic metal bands, and a lot of them have female vocalists. Some don't. Nightwish is great, obviously. I love Epica, big fan of Epica. Rhapsody of Fire, good band. Although, God, I think I've got like 2 factions of them now. Angra, another good band. Leaves' Eyes, I like Leaves' Eyes. I'm not, since Liv left the band, it's, I still like some of their stuff, but I think I liked her better, I liked them better when she was in the band. Blind Guardian, I would kind of throw into this category. Sonata Arctica, also. So many bands. As far as Exit Eden, that's, a super group of really good female singers, and it's fun. They do mostly covers of like old pop, symphonic metal covers of old pop tunes. It's fun for what it is, it's fun. Would I ever buy something like that? I don't know, but it's fun their videos come up on my feed every now and then, and I watch it. It's cool stuff. From Raymond Kaiser. If Rush's original drummer John Rutsey had remained with the band, how do you think their sound would have impacted as opposed to what it became when Neal joined? Yeah, could you just imagine? Neal brought all those great lyrics. And I think that the lyrical content of Rush's material when he joined the band helped shape the way the music was kind of arranged. So had John Rutsey stayed in the band, what would have happened? You have to wonder. Because if would the style of that first album, would they have continued with that kind of, real heavy, bluesy, metallic rock? Would that have continued on? And would they have never kind of morphed into kind of like that sci-fi, fantasy, prog metal band that they kind of became, right? I don't know. You have to wonder. And, John, not a bad drummer, but maybe he was no Neal. So that's a great question. Who knows? Would the band have kind of continued on the way they were going, and would the record label would the public have latched on to that, and would the record label have kept up with the patience? I don't know. It's a great question. From John Blade, what's your opinion on the Neal Schon Jan Hammer solo albums Untold, Passion, and Here to Stay? To me, some of the guitar solos take me back to the first 3 Journey albums. Yeah, I've only heard that first one, Untold, Passion. That's great. And yeah, very much like those first couple Journey albums. Yeah, I love Jan Hammer, and at the time it was kind of weird. It's like, why is this like jazz guy playing with Neal Schon? But man, they work so well together. Second part of John's question. Also, Count Raven, Destruction of the Void, and High on Infinity. Have you ever checked those out? Sounds so much like Ozzy era Sabbath. Not many people talk too much about them. Can't wait for a Thin Lizzy top 10 songs. Take care. Yeah, those Count Raven albums are great. Great, unknown doom albums that any Sabbath fan would absolutely love. Great stuff. And yeah, I've got a Thin Lizzy top 10 songs coming up, not too distant future. From MWO486. Hello, Pete. I do enjoy your take on the many different styles of music that you are presenting. Are you familiar with guitarist Steve Tibbetts? His ECM recordings, I never know how to say it. YR, Safe Journey, Northern Song, and Exploded View are worth several listens. I saw him in his only gig in Philadelphia back in the early 90s. Perfect example of a fabulous artist on the guitar who is known only by a relative few. I have only heard his self-titled debut and that YR album, Year, however you say that. Good stuff. probably should dive into more of his stuff. But yeah, good player, good musician. His albums are very kind of different and quirky, you know. From Melora Loves Darkness. What's up, Melora? Pete, give us your thoughts about the various sounds and eras of Black Death industrial band Samael from Switzerland. I haven't heard all the Samael albums. I'm familiar with like Solar Soul, Reign of Light, Above, and the Blood Ritual album. That's a pretty damn brutal album. I like that. It's an old one. But, you know, Solar Soul, Reign of Light, and Above, especially those first two, good albums. You know, for me, a little too much industrial stuff going on in their music. I was never a really big fan. I thought the Above album, which is one of the more recent ones, pretty good, trying to return to their early sound. But it's just a band that's like doing all sorts of different things, and to me at times they sound a little unfocused. But I know they got a lot of fans out there. Again, I don't dislike anything I've heard by them, but you know, not one of my favorites. But solid stuff. Melora has another question here. Do you like the 3 Comic-Con albums, or Comic-Con? I don't know how to say the name. My favorite is Converging Conspiracies featuring Martin Van Drunen. Love your channel. Always please keep up the awesome work. You are a treasure trove of information. Thank you. Yeah, those Comic-Con albums are pretty crazy. Very, you know, that's very old school kind of death metal. Very raw. Just raw and brutal and punishing, right? Not always my cup of tea, but I can see why a lot of people do. And I love old school death metal, but they tend to be a little more on the, you know, it's the vocals have always kind of gotten me a little bit. But good stuff though. From Bill Goodwin, have you ever heard of the Italian band Pathos Ray? I recently discovered them and really like their 2 releases a lot. Yeah, hell yeah. Their self-titled debut and Sunlit Skies are both great. I remember when those albums came out, I was like, wow, who are these guys? Love them. And then we haven't heard anything from them in like, what, 8-10 years? It seems like it anyway. Both of those are great albums. Really good Italian progressive metal. If you haven't listened to Pathos Ray, check those out. Very good. Bill also asks, I recently got into Mike Tramp's solo work. I was never a big White Lion fan, but I am digging his solo stuff. Any thoughts on him? His Freak of Nature, A Gathering of Freaks is a solid album. I have not heard any Mike Tramp solo albums. I kind of, you know, I was fairly much a White Lion fan. I liked them. They were one of those kind of mellower, kind of hard rock metal bands from the 80s that I kind of gravitated to because he's a great singer, and I love Vito Bratta's guitar playing, and they had a lot of really good songs. But once White Lion kind of splintered, man, I stopped following any of them. So no, I have not heard those albums. From Anthony Ferrara, what's up, Anthony? Do you have John Wetton's Caught in a Crossfire in your collection? I do. Martin Barr plays on a couple tracks. This was released with many different cover art and pressings over the years. Yeah, they have re-released that quite a few times. That's actually a pretty damn solid album from John Wetton. Man, missed that guy. From Ben Rogers, hey Pete, what do you think of the 70s, 80s pop rock Canadian band Prism? I think they are underrated and we're going somewhere until their first singer died. Thanks for the great videos and Merry Christmas. Keep on rocking. Another quick question, but what do you think of the new wave genre in general and bands like Devo, Human League, and Depeche Mode? Let's go back to Prism. Prism were a pretty damn good band. They just had that cool kind of like early 80s sound, very accessible, and I think they could have been, you know, something pretty special. I have like a little kind of collection of theirs and really good songs. So yeah, kind of a forgotten band, right? As far as new wave stuff, Devo, Human League, and Depeche Mode. I mean, I don't dislike any of those bands. It's just not really my thing. You know, Depeche Mode, man, how a bunch of trailblazers they were, right? Very influential band, and Human League had a lot of really good hits. You know, Devo, we all know about Devo. So yeah, just not really my thing. But I know why a lot of people like them. I don't dislike any of them. Just not a huge new wave guy. From Barry Strong, hi Pete, thanks for answering my question again. Here is another. Taking one album from each of the big 3, Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath, and Deep Purple, which do you think is the band's most influential album? And then can you decide which out of the 3 you choose has had the biggest influence on later bands? Man. All right, so I'm going to say Zeppelin 4. Just because, you know, you can arguably say that those first 2 albums were more influential. I just think that those albums are very much, you know, that kind of bluesy hard rock. I think that on Zeppelin 4, they did all sorts of different stuff. They had the hard rock, the kind of bluesier stuff, the kind of folky, you know, things that they were doing. And I just think that 4th album just kind of put it all together. Very influential. For Black Sabbath, I mean, you got to say Paranoid, right? You could arguably say the first album, but I think just Paranoid, it all clicked right there. And Deep Purple, it's either In Rock or Machine Head. I'm going to go with Machine Head because I think that just kind of, there was just something as punishing as In Rock was. Machine Head, and I like In Rock better, but I think Machine Head made it a little bit more kind of palatable for the masses, so to speak. And Machine Head's a little more bluesy. So I think those are their most influential albums, those three. As for now, which is the biggest influence on later bands? Jesus, you would have to say it's either Paranoid or Zeppelin 4. Christ, I think Zeppelin's album obviously influenced much more than hard rock and metal, whereas the Paranoid album, God, what metal band over the last 40 years has not been influenced by Paranoid? Jesus. I'm going to say Paranoid, screw it. Because I'm mostly talking hard rock and metal, right? I think Zeppelin is probably the right answer on a global scheme, but I think as far as like the kind of music we more normally talk about on the show, I'm going to go with Black Sabbath's Paranoid. But that's a great question and a tough question, and you really could give a different answer any day, right? From Bruce Franklin. Hey, Pete, I was wondering if you were into Spiritual Beggars. I haven't heard you mention them, and I'm guessing that you know their stuff. I would think that they would be right up your alley with the heavy rock metal sound, incorporating Hammond organ and bluesy vocals. Few different singers over the years, but the guy they have now sounds like Coverdale. That would be Apollo. Yeah, no, we've mentioned Spiritual Beggars on the show in the past, mainly like reviewing their albums and stuff. I'm a huge fan of Spiritual Beggars. I think that they're like that Sunrise to Sundown album they just released, 2 years ago? Was it 2016, 17, I forget, is awesome. Return to Zero is an awesome album. Their Earth Blues album is awesome. I even like their earlier stuff, that Demon album. I think that was the last album with the singer before Apollo joined. But man, guys, if you like 70s heavy rock, like Bruce said, with killer Hammond organ and blistering guitar work and great vocals, you gotta check out Spiritual Beggars. They're from Sweden. With Michael Amott on lead guitars. Michael Amott also plays in death metal band Arch Enemy, but this is his kind of hard rock thing. Great band. From Tom Fisher. Hi, Pete. Tom from New Jersey here. Was wondering if you could do a review and share your thoughts on 10 Years After. I thought they were very underappreciated compared to other supergroups from their era. Looking forward to your comments as a fellow music fan and an amateur musician. Thank you, sir. Keep up the awesome work. I will. So I guess what you're asking is, can I do a retrospective on 10 Years After? I think what I probably should start doing is a top 10 songs, whatever. Great band. I love 10 Years After. And a string of really, really solid albums. And, Alvin Lee, a great guitar player. From Alex L. I love Jimi Hendrix. I have been enjoying his music for almost 40 years, but in my personal opinion, Hendrix is overrated as a songwriter. As a guitar player, he is one of the best of all time, but he is not as good of a songwriter as he is a player. I think the fans think like this: okay, he is the greatest guitarist of all time, and therefore his songs and albums are great too. I also think that listeners actually do not listen to what is on a particular album or song, but instead they're always in the back of their mind think that Hendrix is the best, and because of that, his albums are awesome. His greatness is in revolutionizing rock music and inventing new sound, not in the quality of his songs. I'm talking about only the first 3 original releases: Are You Experienced, Act As Bold As Love, Electric Ladyland, not about numerous compilations, reissues, or live albums. What do you think, please? No, I don't agree. I think Hendrix, are you talking about songwriting as far as lyrics go, or in the arrangements? Because how can you say that those arrangements on those early Hendrix Experience albums are not good? I mean, come on. There's plenty of catchy songs on there. Granted, he did a couple covers here and there, but plenty of catchy tunes that are more than just about the guitar playing. So I don't agree. I think Hendrix is a very good songwriter. May not have been the greatest singer in the world, but I think his voice was perfect for the songs. And yeah, he was an amazing guitar player, but there's a lot of those early tunes that are much more than just, the guitar work that's going on there. Those are anthems. So I don't agree. But I mean, I respect your opinion, and I can't say, I've heard, my wife says that too, but I don't know. I don't agree, but that's okay. I think he was actually a pretty damn good songwriter. From Lawrence Terwilliger. Hi, Pete. Thanks for the prog metal bands that you mentioned for me to listen to. Obscura is quite good. Well, how about recommending some 50s and 60s jazz albums? I have Miles Davis's Kind of Blue and John Coltrane's A Love Supreme albums. This is incredible music to listen to. Absolutely. Can you recommend something along this quality of jazz? Okay, so get your pen and paper ready, guys. So here's some recommendations. I didn't want to throw out a ton of bands or artists because there's just so much, but here's some key ones. Let's go back to Miles Davis. Check out Sketches of Spain. It's a little bit different. It's more orchestral. Gorgeous album. Also from Miles Davis, Miles Smiles. That's with his classic mid-60s band. Awesome album. Milestones, another great album. I think that's from late 50s, 58, 59. Files de Kilimanjaro, that mid 60s album. Great album. How about, let's go back to John Coltrane. How about Blue Train? How about Giant Steps? My Favorite Things, great album. And a really great live album to get is Live at Birdlands from Coltrane. Awesome album. Check out Lee Morgan's Sidewinder, The Sidewinder. A great, great album. From Art Blakey, get Moanin', like Moanin', and Night in Tunisia. Both of those albums are great. Check out Eric Dolphy, Dolphy, Out to Lunch. Great album. From Cannonball Adderley, check out Something Else. Really good album. From Freddie Hubbard, his Red Clay album and his Ready for Freddie are both very, very good. Go and get your hands on a Charlie Parker retrospective, or I don't even know if he's got a greatest hits. He's got so many compilations. Just get one of them. Because you got to have some Charlie Parker in your life. And also get Thelonious Monk, his quartet album. That's dynamite. So there's some stuff for you. There's some homework for you. Check them out. Let me know what you think. From Indie Catman 777. Hi, Pete. Can you talk about Jimmy McCullough as a player? Another great underappreciated guitarist, along with the likes of Tommy Bolin and Mick Box. Would be great to have you do a top 10 show on underrated guitarists. That's a pretty damn good idea. As far as Jimmy McCullough goes, I'm a huge Paul McCartney and Wings fan, and I've always liked his playing a lot. Of course, he died way too young, and another guy who just, the drugs and whatnot just took control of him. All you need to listen to if you want to hear prime Jimmy McCullough, is listen to Wings Over America, the triple live album from '76. He's got some great playing on that. Great playing. I wish we had more from him, I tell you. Really underrated guy. From Mark Williams. Hey, Pete, have you checked out Vandenberg's Moon Kings from 2014? Yeah, it's a pretty solid album. I don't own it, but I remember it was a pretty expensive import at the time when it came out. I remember listening to it on YouTube, and I really liked it, and I always wanted to get it and just never did. Very good. Also, Jeff Beck is probably my favorite artist of all time. What do you think of the first two Jeff Beck group albums with Cozy Powell? Funny enough, I was just talking to someone about those last night. Those are pretty good, funky rock albums. With a little bit of jazz going on in there too. I like those albums. Very underrated. I think when most people talk about like Jeff Beck's best albums, they talk about the first two albums with Rod Stewart, and then they talk about Blow by Blow and Wired. But they kind of forget about those two Jeff Beck group albums and that sat in the middle there. Those are very good albums. From Liam Lahr. Hi, Pete. Love the channel. Was wondering if there are any occasions where you saw a support act with no expectations and they turned out to be great, or maybe when a support act stole the show. I remember seeing Sabaton supporting Dragon Force in 2009. Had never heard of them, but made me a big fan. Thanks and have a great Christmas from Cornwall in the UK. A couple notable ones. I remember back, Christ, what year was this? 83 maybe? I don't even remember. Motley Crue was opening up for Ozzy, and there was a third band on the bill called Wasted, which little did I know till like at the time that it was Pete Way's band from UFO, and I thought they were damn good. Surprised the hell out of me, and I'm glad I came into the arena early enough to see them. Here's another one, and this was, I think, in early 92. I think it was very early 92 or late 91. I don't remember. I think it was early 92. Saxon opened for Triumph at the Palladium in New York City. I had never heard Saxon before. Saxon were fairly new at the time, and I think this was their first, if I'm not mistaken, their first U.S. tour opening for Triumph. And I loved Triumph, and I loved them back then, but man, Saxon, I wouldn't say they blew them away, but man, it came close. I was a huge Saxon fan from that very moment. And the other one that really comes to mind too, and this is when Metallica was really starting to peak, but they opened up for Ozzy Osbourne, and I believe this was on was it the Bark at the Moon tour, or was it the one after that? I don't remember. But Metallica, Cliff Burton was still alive, and it was the Master of Puppets tour. And man, Metallica just laid Ozzy to waste. It was probably the best Metallica show I ever saw. This was the Meadowlands Arena at the Brendan Byrne Arena in New Jersey in East Rutherford. And man, they just completely blew Ozzy off the face of the earth. That's how good they were. That was probably one of the best opening acts I've ever seen. Metallica was just absolutely on fire at that point in time. And then Cliff was gone not long afterwards. So real shame. But man, whew, That was great. From Brandon Clark, based on your music knowledge, I know you said you got into Alter Bridge a little late, but do you have a favorite album from them? I really like their first album. I'd like you to do a top 10 songs. Okay. Thanks again. Love the channel. I would say for me, it's either Blackbird, their second album, or the most recent one, Last Hero, which I really like a lot. But every album is great. You can't go wrong with the first one. You know, they're all good. Really, really solid band. And I wish it didn't take me so long to get into them. From Wizardo Fox, thanks for all your great videos. You mentioned that you like Steve Hackett. Have you followed all his solo career? I think he is a great composer and a really prolific musician. What are your favorite albums from Steve and why? I'm going to lean to, I really like his debut Voyage of the Acolyte, as well as Spectral Mornings, Please Don't Touch, Till We Have Faces, Defector. Those are all those like kind of early albums that he did, like late 70s, mid-late 70s into the early 80s. There's just this kind of earthy feeling about all of them, and he adds in all sorts of cool stuff. Actually, all the Steve Hackett solo albums, even like Guitar Noir, Wolflight, and To Watch the Storms, which are some of my more favorites of his recent albums, they all have a lot of variety on them. So you get little bits of like, you know, kind of classical, you get some full-on rock stuff, some prog, a little bit of pop. He does everything, you know, and those early albums are really kind of, there's just a warm quality to them that I always really like. I always liked him as a player. I met him in person. He was a super nice guy, and I like his vocals too. Just a lot of really special albums from him. From Indie Catman 777, one more. What do you think of the following bands and albums associated with Deep Purple family tree, such as Trapeze, Pace, Ashton and Lord, Zephyr, and Episode 6? Okay, well, I love Trapeze. I think I've talked about that before. Trapeze were a hell of a band. Hell of a band. Man, that Medusa album and the album that came after it, whew, we're just, God, the name of it, what the hell is the name of that album? We're Not the Music, We're Just the Band. I think, God, for some reason, then this name should not escape me because I'm a huge fan of the album, but the name of it escaped me right now. Those two Trapeze albums are dynamite. Even the albums that they did after Hughes left were actually very, very good. The Pace, Ashton Lord album, actually pretty damn solid. I have that. I like that quite a bit. That's really good. Zephyr, that's the early Tommy Bolin band. That's very solid too. Great female vocals. Really good kind of rock band. Episode 6, that's the band that Ian Gillan and Roger Glover were in before they joined Deep Purple. That's, you know, it's British pop psych of the time, of the era. Decent for what it is. And it, you know, if you're a Deep Purple fan, obviously you got to be curious about the Episode 6 stuff. From Tom Vicky, I got a question for you. What do you think of The Residents? Man, I've been asked that question, and I think I've answered that 3 times already. The Residents don't click with me at all. That's just way too weird. That's way too out there for me. Second question, your favorite live double albums in the 70s, top 6, regardless of genre. I think the best live double albums came out during the 70s. Yeah, all right, so how can I just do top 6, right? This is impossible. All right, so Deep Purple, I'm just going to rattle off a bunch. Deep Purple made in Japan. Allman Brothers at the Fillmore East. The Who live at Leeds. UFO Strangers in the Night. Kiss Alive. Thin Lizzy Live and Dangerous. Scorpions, Tokyo Tapes. Wings Over America. Sorry, it's a triple album, but I'm going to throw it in here. All right, some of these are Robin Trower Live is a single album. Judas Priest Unleashed in the East is a single album. Grand Funk's live album, that's a double album. Humble Pie, Rockin' the Fillmore, that counts. Gentle Giant, Playing the Fool. Yes Songs from Yes. Genesis Live is a single, but how about Seconds Out? I love that one too. Jimi Hendrix Band of Gypsies, that's a single, that doesn't count. Zappa, Roxy, and Elsewhere. Blue Oyster Cult, On Your Feet, On Your Knees. Kansas, 2 for the Show. I mean, come on. There's a million more. The 70s was the best era for live albums. Bar none. Absolutely. Great question. From DC Tune Time. A few new questions for you. Do you like Richie Kotzen solo and with the Winery Dogs? Honestly, I've heard very little Richie Kotzen solo. Great player, great singer. I like the Winery Dogs stuff. Really good band. Good kind of bluesy hard rock band. We need more of them. How about the Posies, a Seattle group with a bit of grunge and vocal harmonies like the Hollies? Never listened to the Posies. And finally, do you like the music mashups that have been showing up on the mighty YouTube? My current favorite is a Black Sabbath Temptations titled Get Ready for the Grave. Tuneful and funny. I mean, those things are a lot of fun. I don't actually go seek those out, but I have a couple friends who constantly send me links to those. And there's some of them. I heard one recently. It was Pantera and, oh man, I can't remember now because I've seen so many of them. They're a lot of fun. They're cool. It's just amazing how some of these like old classic pop tunes or R&B songs or soul songs mesh well with like current metal stuff or classic metal stuff. It's crazy how that works out. From Jeer Laden Lad. Hey Pete, I was wondering if you ever heard of the Tarney Spencer Band. If so, do you like them? I mean, No Time to Lose, right? What a great song. I can't say I know anything else by them, but that's a classic song. Another one-hit wonder, right? It's just great song. Yeah, No Time to Lose. That's a really good song. From Lee Gwentert. Hey, Pete, what are your favorite albums by Devin Townsend and why? What I find fascinating with his music and production is how deep and wide his style is and how it reflects his personality, especially his humor. There are so many dimensions to his music. He reminds me of Todd Rundgren in his way. Yeah, I think I answered this question on last week's show too. Devin Townsend, musical genius. I met him. He's a great guy. He's hilarious to hang out with. And I absolutely agree. He's kind of like the modern day Todd Rundgren of this era. Ocean Machine, Teria, Ziltoid, Addicted, and all the Strapping Young Lad albums are probably my favorites of all the many Devin Townsend albums. From Nam250. Hi, Pete. Do you have any recommendations of websites for jazz fusion news and release dates and reviews? Any suggestions would be appreciated. Thanks. No, but does anybody else have any? I don't go anywhere for jazz fusion news and release dates. I don't know of any place. Probably a good place to go is Progressive Ears. ProgressiveEars.com. It's mostly a reader forum, but a lot of people post news items and things about prog and fusion, all that kind of stuff. So start there. But if anybody else has any suggestions, let's hear them. From David Rowe. Hi, Pete. Love your Q&A shows. Your knowledge is awe-inspiring. Well, thank you. Do you enjoy the music of Black Star Writers? Yeah, of course I do. I'm a big Thin Lizzy fan, and I like Black Star Writers a lot. I think their studio albums are great. I saw them live opening up for Priest and Saxon recently. Good band. Keep that spirit of Lizzy alive, man. Solid stuff. And even if you're not a Thin Lizzy fan, or if you think that there's just a Thin Lizzy, you got Scott Gorham and company, and it's just like a tribute band, they're doing great original music. So check them out. From Bill Goodwin. Saw Alice Cooper back in September. Still puts on a great show. What are your thoughts on his pre-easy action music? So I think specifically you're talking about Pretty's For You, right? On Frank Zappa's label. It's a weird-ass album, right? It's very kind of psych, garage rock, glammy type of thing. Every now and then I like to pop that in and think, wow, this is where it kind of all started, right? Not a great album by any stretch of the imagination. But, good stuff. I mean, even the Easy Action kind of is a little bit like that. So, Alice Cooper Curiosity is what it is. From Arnaud B. Aside from the sublime Todd Rundgren's Utopia from 1974, what's your favorite Todd Rundgren album? I would say A Wizard, a True Star. That's a great album. Great Todd Rundgren solo album. Followed by, I like the Todd album. Just Todd. I think that was his third solo album, I think. Maybe fourth. I forget exactly. Obviously, Something Anything is a great album. As far as Utopia goes, outside of the, Todd Rundgren's Utopia debut album, I think the Raw album is great. Another Live is great. And the Road to Utopia album is fantastic. That's came out in 1980, I think. Also, what do you think of Stevie Wonder's 70s output? Great stuff. I mean, all that 70s stuff from Stevie Wonder is just fantastic. So many great songs. Question number 3. What are your 5 favorite blues-based songs of all time? You know how hard of a question that is? All right, let's just throw some out there. Two Rolling Stone by Robin Trower. Walk in My Shadow by Free. Spoonful, a Willie Dixon tune, done very well by Cream. Good Morning Little Schoolgirl by 10 Years After. And how about Hear My Train A-Comin' by Jimi Hendrix. Obviously, that list could be enormous. I should probably do a whole show on top blues-based rock songs, right? From James Atkinson. Was really thrilled someone else liked Scorpions in Trance. How can you not? That was the first Scorpions I heard. Never hear you mention Bebop Deluxe or Klaatu in your list. Do you like any of their records? Okay, from Bebop Deluxe, I own Axe Victim, Sunburst Finish, great album, Futurama, and Modern Music. Those first 2 are great. The second 2 are really good as well. That's all I have by those guys. I like those albums. Bill Nelson, great guitar player. Very unique band. Like, how do you really even describe Bebop Deluxe, right? Kind of proggy, kind of poppy. Some of their stuff's got a little new wave thing going on. They kind of predated that a little bit of glam, Very good band. As far as Klaatu goes, I only have their first album. I think here it was self-titled. I know it was called something else in Europe. Kind of a cool band, right? Kind of poppy, proggy, psych. I hear a lot of Beatles influence. Kind of reminds me of Badfinger too, a little bit of times with a little more keyboards. Cool band. That's all I'm familiar with though, them. From Blake L. Have you heard of the jazz fusion band Marbin? Hell yeah. Man, what a killer band. Blistering guitar and sax. They've been a staple on the Moon June Records label for a while, although I think that their most recent album was self-released, but I think back with Moon June distribution. Yeah, killer band. Modern fusion at its best with a good kind of grabbing some influence from the past. If you want to hear a killer live album, get Marvin's Third Set live album, which was released, I think, 3 years ago or something like that. Whew, smoking. From James Ferrante again. Have you ever heard of the band Hammersmith? They issued 2 albums on Mercury, Hammersmith in 75 and It's For You in 76. After lackluster sales of their second album, they were dropped from Mercury and they split up later that year. I had not heard of them, but I went onto our wonderful YouTube here and listened to a whole bunch of tunes. Yeah, decent commercial hard rock from, mid-late 70s stuff. Decent. Never heard of them before, but good stuff. From Wade Harden. Love to hear your top 10 list of bands that radio should... love to hear your top 10 lists of bands that radio should have played more. How about we just do a rant show on that? Because that's going to take a lot of thought on my part. Bands that had great songs that the radio ignored, that were made, that their songs were made for radio. I'm going to do a rant on that. Thanks for that idea, Wade. I'm going to do that. From King Blood 8U. Sorry about all the questions last week. Just one this week. Have you ever bought an album just by the album cover, not knowing anything about the band? I did it with Wasp's first album. Oh, hell yeah. You know how many of us did that back in the day? That was like normal. We had no internet to look stuff up. We went to the record store. We started looking through racks like, holy shit, look at that album cover. That looks cool. I'm going to buy it. I did it all the time. Molly Hatchet's first album. I bought that. Knew nothing about them. Iron Maiden Killers. I was not aware of the first album, okay? Killers came out. I saw that. I heard a couple people talking about it. I'm like, all right, I'm buying it. I just bought it. And then, of course, I bought the first album, shortly thereafter. Later in the decade, Death, Scream, Bloody Gore. I saw that album cover. I was like, I got to have that. Zombies and undead people. Yes, more. Omens, The Curse. That kind of bird creature on the front, man. I had to have that. Never heard a lick of their music. Creators, Pleasure to Kill album. Again, more like kind of demons and monsters on the front. I was like, it's a thrash band from Germany? Yeah, sure, I'll buy it. Loved it. I could probably come up with a zillion more. From Ragad Abdullah. Hey, Pete, have you heard of the series called JoJo's Bizarre Adventure? I have not. I looked it up. I did a Google search. It's some kind of Japanese manga show, which I'm not really into. So that's all I know about it. From Super Rowdy One. Would love for you to do an episode on the amazing Lina and Thin Lizzy catalog. Yeah, it's on the list. It's on the long list. From Icaro Borges, is there any album that you completely changed your opinion over time, like something you initially hated when it was released, but then grew to love it, or vice versa? That's another good. In fact, I'm going to put down, do a little. There we go. Put a little note here for myself. That is a great topic for a rant, I think. Albums that you hated when you first heard it, and then all of a sudden you loved them. I'm going to name one right now. I'm going to save others for another future show. But I think Rush Power Windows, when it first came out, really wasn't into that much. And I really haven't been into it for a couple decades here. And I have recently, and this is going to be part of another rant that I'm doing on 80s Rush and 80s Genesis, where I've gone back and just tried to rediscover some of those 80s albums where both those bands got a little poppier. And I will tell you that I have grown to now really appreciate Power Windows. And it's one of those albums that I really didn't like back in the day, and now I'm kind of like, yeah, it's a pretty damn good album. So that's one of them. But that's a great question. From Bongalong, some favorite one-hit wonders. One of mine goes way back to 1966, Psychotic Reaction by Count 5. Yeah, you got to love the one-hit wonders, right? How about Dancing in the Moonlight by King Harvest, right? Great song. How about Venus by Shocking Blue? Okay. Magic by Pilot. Oh, 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 it's magic. Great. How about Stuck in the Middle with You by Steelers Wheels? How about Come and Get Your Love by Redbone? But the best one-hit wonder ever, and it's one of my favorite songs of all time, you've heard me say this before, is Brandy by The Looking Glass. That's the best one-hit wonder ever. From the Moogle Master, since you gave your opinion on Kate Bush, what do you think of Janis Joplin and Bjork? I love Janis Joplin. Bjork, I have never listened to, other than hearing a couple tunes here and there. It hasn't really moved me much, but Janis rules. From Jake LaFrance, who are some of your favorite drummers? My favorites have always been John Bonham, Mike Portnoy, and Steve Gadd. 3 great ones right there. Cozy Powell, Steve Smith from Journey, and all sorts of other bands. Vital Information, Jean-Luc Ponty, so on and so forth. John Bonham, obviously. Keith Moon. Ian Pace, Bill Ward, Lenny White from Return to Forever. Alphonse Mouzon, great drummer, jazz drummer. Art Blakey, the great Art Blakey. Tony Williams, a lot of jazz guys here. Neil Peart from Rush. Bill Bruford. Mike Portnoy. Steve Gadd's another great one. God, there's so many great jazz drummers, man. From Dude Why. Hey, Pete, what do you think of the Butthole Surfers? I've never heard of the Butthole Surfers. Heard of them for ages, never listened to them. Also, do you like Stanley Kubrick's movies? He's my favorite movie director. Keep up the good work. Thanks, dude. I will. As far as Stanley Kubrick goes, I mean, The Shining, my favorite movie of his. I love The Shining. Full Metal Jacket, great war film. Spartacus, obviously, is a classic. And, 2001. As boring as that movie kind of is, it's just a spectacular, visionary kind of film. And I haven't watched it in a while. I need to rewatch that. A lot of people are going to say, what about A Clockwork Orange? I never got that movie. I've seen it like 2 or 3 times. It just doesn't click with me, but I know a lot of people love it. So it's another one I'm just going to have to revisit again one of these days. From Jamie Laszlo, one of my favorite metal bands of the last few years is Chemis, Khemmis. Have you heard them? I have. They combine doom and traditional metal with dashes of black metal. I think Hunted is a modern metal, classic metal album. Yeah, Hunted is really good, but you need to check out their Desolation album, which is really good. That came out, I think, this summer. That's quite good, too. Very, very good band. Good kind of modern doom band. From Lisa Toderico, what is your opinion of the Rock Island album by Jethro Tull? I like Rock Island. Not one of their top 5 or 10, but damn good album, I think, for an 80s Jethro Tull album. I like it. There's some standout tracks on that. So I've always been a Rock Island fan. From Daniel N. Lowe, have you ever heard the self-titled 1971 album by Mu, M-U, or is it more obscure than I thought? I have never heard of it. Never heard of it. It's a relaxing jazz blues album with great vocals by Merrill Funkhauser. I used to own it on vinyl, but it was destroyed in a flood. Surely I'm not the only person on the planet who's heard it and appreciated it as much as I do. I'm sure you're not, but I haven't heard it. From Jiff882, speaking of Videodrome, I mentioned Videodrome in my last show, the movie. Are you a Blondie fan? Yeah, how can you not be a Blondie fan? I've always been a Blondie fan. Debbie Harry is awesome, and all those early Blondie hits and deep cuts are just really, really cool. Really good band. I was big into Blondie back in the day, and I still appreciate Blondie. From Anthony Perrault, hey Pete, question. I've seen so many horror movies, I've become desensitized to them. Yeah, see how that happens? That happened to me too. What scary movies have you seen that scared or disturbed you the first time you saw them? A few of mine were The Exorcist, Hellraiser, and Jacob's Ladder. Throw in Nosferatu, the silent one, from when I was a kid. Also, well, let's tackle your first question first. Yeah, The Exorcist scared the shit out of me for years. And to the point where, for a while there, I was almost afraid to watch it. But it's just a great, great movie. It's a creepy movie. It's a scary. I try to watch The Exorcist at least once every year, and it still gets me. And I'm still kind of like, man, this is a well done creep out film. Totally. The other one, the first time I saw the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I was like, holy fuck! It's like, what just happened? That movie is just so real. And so, like, raw and brutal. Even though, they really didn't show much of anything in that movie. But just, like, everything was implied. And that just freaked the hell out of me. Videodrome. I won't even get into the story why that freaked me out. But it did. Yeah, Nosferatu. That early, silent film is chilling as anything. Great, great movie. Yeah, Hellraiser and Hellraiser 2. I think when they first came out, I was kind of like, whoa, this is different. Creepy films, man. The first Nightmare on Elm Street album. When I first saw Nightmare on Elm Street, I was in college, and it had just come out, and I think it just came out on video, on VHS, and a bunch of us, we were in the dorm, and we were drinking beers and whatnot, and we turned out all the lights, and we put that in, and that was pretty creepy for the time. Now you watch it, and it's almost laughable, but at the time, in 1985, 86, whatever, that was some serious shit, right? The first Friday the 13th movie, kind of scary. Halloween, obviously, that kind of unnerved me a little when I first saw it. Another movie that really, just because it was so, at the time, so over-the-top gory, was Fulci's City of the Living Dead. I remember renting that on VHS tape, and my girlfriend at the time and I were watching it on, it was like a Friday or Saturday night, And that movie is just so over the top gory and gore like we had never seen before. And I was like repulsed. I was just like, oh my God, you know, this is totally like, what is this? You know, what else? The Omen, actually pretty creepy movie, I thought. Rosemary's Baby, another movie that kind of creeped me out. So those are some good ones there. Oh, another part of his question, Anthony's question, did you ever hear of the Canadian rock band from the late 70s and early 80s called the Daniel Band? I played golf one day with Dan McCabe, and who formed the band, and I had never heard of them. I listened to some of their music, and they weren't bad. What do you think? Yeah, I had never heard of them before, and of course I went to go investigate, and I listened to one of their albums, or their only album, and pretty good stuff for this Canadian band. Kind of reminds me of like early Billy Squier, a little bit of U.S. band Riot, little bits of April Wine, and there's hints, maybe more in the vocal style, of Rush. Pretty good band. I think I'm going to actually pick up that one album that's on CD that's available. So pretty good. The Daniel Band. Last question for today from Moon Sorrow. Hey, Pete, have you ever thought about doing shows where you rank all the band's studio albums from worst to best? I think it would be very entertaining to watch, and I like that idea, and I'm going to steal it for a potential another series of shows. So there you have it. Like I don't have enough to do. Moon Sorrow, right? Is that Moon Sorrow? Yeah, that was Moon Sorrow. So that's it for today, guys. Questions and answers. You know the drill. If you got new questions, type them in the comments and feedbacks. I'll use those to answer on next week's show. So till then, visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. Of course, we're on the mighty YouTube quite often. Man, I didn't shave today. I look terrible. It is Sunday, right, guys? Who shaves on a Sunday? So coming this week, we got more top 10 songs. I think I'm going to try and do a deep cuts on classic album, at least one this week. Haven't figured out what it is yet. And I got a new product showcase coming up. So there's lots to do this week, right? So till then, stay tuned. We'll see you then.